Let me ask you a question. What are your pet hates? I don't know, maybe you're not a big fan of public displays of affection. Perhaps you cannot stand lateness, or you're really frustrated when people just talk too much. I don't know what it is. And some of your pet hates, they're just going to come down to your personality, the things that you like, your preferences. But sometimes there's things that frustrate us that point to a deeper reality within us, especially when we feel a sense of injustice, when somebody's done something wrong to us, when it's unfair. And it's this deeper sense of something called morality, right and wrong, good and evil. It comes out of us when we feel that somebody's wronged us, but it also comes out when we know we've done something wrong. That undeniable sense of guilt that isn't just the society we've been raised in or the family. It's something that's deeper within us. And this question of morality, right and wrong, good and evil, it's actually the foundation of probably the hardest and biggest question of all. How can God be good when there's so much evil in the world? And it's such a provocative and personal question. It's such a deep question because all of us have experienced something or seen a loved one go through something that just makes it almost impossible to reconcile the idea of God being loving and good and all these things going on. But perhaps actually there's a way of looking at this question that instead of pointing us away from God, actually pushes us into Him. And if you think about this whole thing of morality, we make that statement, I don't believe in God because of all the evil. We actually maybe don't realize what we're saying. I said that before I became a Christian. And actually what we're really saying is that I believe in evil, aren't we? And ultimately, if we say we believe in evil, then we've got to admit that we believe in some kind of good as well. But the problem is we've got to have a way of distinguishing between those two. Most people have come to know that as a moral law. And that moral law has got to be objective, not subjective. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. Think about it. In sport, we have rules that are set outside of the situation because we know if it was just down to the players in the moment, it'd be subjective. They'd change the rules based on their feelings, their preferences, or something that's going to benefit them. And so in order to have this moral law that works, we've ultimately got to have a moral law giver. In other words, God. You know, even atheist philosophers recognize this. J.L. Mackie saying it's almost impossible to understand the morality we observe in our world without an all-powerful God to create it. And so when we take the moral lawgiver, God, out of the equation, it's almost impossible to actually have a moral law, which means that we can't really say that there's good, which perhaps even means that we can't actually say that there's evil. Even atheist philosophers actually believe that evil is just an illusion. Richard Dawkins saying that our world has no purpose, no design, no meaning, and therefore no evil, no good, no justice. And that just doesn't work, does it? You know, it's all well and good in a theory book, but when we feel wronged, it just doesn't match up. Even Richard Dawkins himself famously taking to Twitter when a sportsman cheated, he calling him a revolting cheat. But where does that sense of justice, that conscience come from? It actually comes from the fact that there is a moral law and therefore there is a moral lawgiver. In the book of Romans chapter 2, God's saying that He wrote on our hearts this sense of right and wrong, a conscience that even if you were raised and you didn't ever hear anything of what the Bible teaches, you'd end up living in that rhythm of what is right and wrong. And isn't that so true? But the problem is well, okay, God exists, but there seems to be so much pain. I just don't understand. Why doesn't He do something about it? And that's where Christianity is different. Most other world religions, most other worldviews, well, they leave us with either that we deserve the hurt that we're feeling, or that, well, it's just an illusion, it's just what life is. Whereas Christianity shows us that God is proactive in doing something about our pain and our suffering. The Bible describing that God so loved us, He gave Jesus to deal with it. Jesus Himself taking on our pain, taking on our suffering. God actually stepping in to do something about it. And so instead of just being left in our hurt, Christianity offers us hope. It offers us healing. The final book in the Bible teaching us that God's going to wipe away every tear. There's going to be no more pain, no more sorrow, no more suffering. In fact, that famous prayer many of us were taught in school, the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, that in fact to know God through the Christian faith is to experience greater levels of that hope and healing day by day, week in, week out. You see, A 5-minute video isn't going to necessarily deal with the pain that you so legitimately feel, but perhaps the thing that you think is pushing you away from God actually is pointing you towards Him. I once met a lady and asked her, what do you believe? And she said, I haven't got time for God. I said, why? And she said, well, my mother died of cancer 10 years ago, and I just haven't got time for a God that would let that happen. In that moment, this little girl ran up. We were in a cafe, and this lady's countenance completely changed. The girl ran off. I said, who's that? And she said, oh, that's my daughter. And she used these words, that's my miracle girl. I said, your miracle girl? She said, yeah, me and my partner, we were never able to get pregnant, but then miraculously 10 years ago, we had her. And I said, I hope you don't think I'm speaking out of turn, but you attribute your mum's death to God, but not the birth of your daughter, because we've got a bigger question to ask. As well as why do bad things happen, we've got to reconcile, well, why do good things? Perhaps there is far more reason to believe than you think. I want to encourage you to watch the message where we dig into this in far greater detail, because our heart for you is not to prove that Christianity is right. Our heart for you is that you would find a hope and a healing for the hurt